And now that weed is socially acceptable, it's such a long, drawn out decline.
I heard a guy in an MA meeting, and he said
amazing.
marijuana addiction is like being slowly kicked to death by a.
I think
That's kind of the
bands
way.
that don't talk are very interesting. That was certainly like the Hoover thing, was like
Yeah.
having the preacher kind of allowed them to avoid talking as much as possible. I want to say Regulator Watts did, like Alex did, almost zero banter. Yeah, like that. I really don't remember them saying a word. And there's
Yeah.
something about that that does.
It charges the space, I think.
Yeah, because it almost creates.
You are now listening to Male Worship Radio.
The thing I hate about having an addiction is I hate feeling like a slave. Like I got to go back to the dispensary. It was the same with cigarettes. You know, it was like, why do
That's what what's his name
cigarette?
talked about too. William S. Burroughs.
Oh, just being
He
an
said that
addict.
his problem was that his biggest problem with it was he didn't like having to do something and not being in control of it, really.
Yeah, totally. It sucks. I mean, I should count my blessings. I still have kratom, so you know, I'm trying to wean myself off all of it though before I drive across the country. Yeah, I don't want to take any chances getting like caught with weed somewhere in the middle of the country.
Oh yeah, you definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah, like there's discreet ways you could probably get away with it, like buy edibles and put them in like a candy pack or something. But I just, in general, I don't think it's a good idea.
No, I think that's wise.
Yeah, I've got my concerns.
I think you can wean yourself off of it.
The weed?
Yeah.
I think I can too. I've done it before. It's
like the big thing is it's just that whole thing of replacing it with something when the triggers hit, or rewarding yourself for not doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's just like rewiring those like pleasure centers to look for something else. I mean, I guess there's two ways. One, you can just like wean yourself off of it like totally and be like Mr. Willpower. That seems hard. Or there's like just give yourself something else, which is like what a lot of like, you know, like how alcoholics become heavy duty coffee smokers a lot of the times.
That's
like
what I'm worried about. Yeah, I'm worried about becoming a smoker again.
I think you just replace it with something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but something that, well, one that won't get you arrested on a cross-country trip, like, you know, eating cookies, even if it'll make you fat for a minute.
Yeah, totally. I could use that though. I need to gain weight. But what was I gonna say about drugs? Oh, like what I said in my text, I really mean. Like there was like a time in our lives when we were younger, when you're kids, when you don't have drugs as part of your life. And I remember having a distinct sense when I was a kid that I was sort of naturally high in a weird way. Like it was just, I think it relates to like just being an artist, I guess. Like you can sort of live in a different reality. Like you don't really need that stuff. I don't know. It doesn't make much sense, but
no, just totally. I guess I don't know if it's true for everybody, but it is 100% true. And it's like you get whatever release it is that you get from whatever addiction you have, you just tend to get it from something else that's not bad for you.
Right.
Like whether it's like drawing or skateboarding or making music or listening to music or whatever.
Yeah. And you know what's beautiful about that is like in a lot of ways, those are the things that typically you're robbed of when you're in an addiction. Like you no longer, I mean, I still do stuff. I'm not that down, but like, you know, I definitely feel like the drugs are a barrier between me and my realizing my like full potential as whatever I am, you know, like, I just feel like my art will be better. My music will probably be better. And just
we talked about, I can't remember. Do you watch, I think that clip of Sam Hyde, and he's talking about how lots of people think that they can smoke weed and get shit done. And he basically says Nick Roquefort is the example. Like he's the
only one.
He's the exception, not the rule. Like he can smoke weed all the time and somehow he gets stuff done. Right. Most people can't. They just derail their lives and convince themselves otherwise.
Yeah, that's basically what I keep doing over and over. I mean, if I'm being honest, you probably could justifiably like pin those things on my failures at the moment and just the chaos of my life. But yeah, There's a thing with weed where you get to the point where you barely feel it anyway, or like it's like the only thing that like you only feel normal when you're stoned.
Yep.
Like you feel well or something, but it's a hard thing to quit because you don't hit the bottoms the way you do with alcohol. Like,
yeah, I would think that weed is like probably in the current landscape one of the hardest things to quit, because like alcohol, it can destroy you, even though it's like socially acceptable up until the point where it's not.
Yeah.
And now that weed is socially acceptable, and it is such a long, drawn out decline as to like what it will do to you, unless you're one of those people that gets like the weed induced psychosis or whatever.
Yeah.
It's gonna it's gonna be a long slog. It's like just basically like having a bad habit that doesn't catch up with you until it catches up with you.
Yeah, it takes like, I heard a guy in an MA meeting. MA is like Marijuana Anonymous, and he said marijuana addiction is like being slowly kicked to death by a rabbit for like 40 years. Like you don't notice it's even happening, like that your life is kind of, and I can relate to that. I mean, I think relatively speaking, my life is not that chaotic, but yeah, I don't know, man.
But once it gets chaotic, it becomes noticeable. Right. Like all of a sudden, like one action, like it's like weed didn't make your life chaotic, but once your life became chaotic, then like weed becomes necessary to manage the emotions of the chaos.
Yeah, I think the first step for me is going to be like, you can't see my desk right now, but I just have all kinds of like weed paraphernalia all over my desk. And I think I just got to like throw stuff out and get rid of or put stuff away, just so that my house is like, there's like a pipe right behind my computer screen.
That's definitely.
And I hate weed culture too, like the whole, I don't know. Yeah, I mean this is just a break. I'm not like trying to put it on myself to like I'm quitting forever. Like I just kind of have to, like I'll probably still use what I have left here, but like just to put it in perspective, these little cartridges, I don't know if you can see. These like weed cartridges are like $30 each, and up until kind of recently, I would be able to like buy one and it would last for like a week or something because it was just like I wasn't using it that much. Now all of a sudden I'm like buying one of these like every other day.
Oh crap!
And I don't have the money for that shit. Like I gotta kind of be an adult here. Anyway, so Nail Worship Radio. I'm kind of derailing us into my.
That's fine. It's so funny because I was actually, before we start, I was like, do we want to talk about you quitting weed on the podcast?
I don't mind. I mean,
well, we just did. Done.
Yeah, we just did. Yeah, I don't mind that. It's a pretty loaded topic, I guess. Anyway, what are we talking about today?
Are we talking about? Let's see. Well, we can talk about Kerosene 454. Came by to kill me.
Yep.
Whole thing is on streaming.
Yep.
An initial little recollection that I am realizing, and I'm not sure how this works, but I clearly, I don't know if I was like listening to this record. I had it on vinyl and on a tape. I don't know if I was listening to it through to the very end a lot, or if just certain things I just forgot about because it's been, I don't know, like 18, 17 years or something since I listened to it really heavily, even though I've always kept it in my possession and like came back to it from time to time.
Yeah.
Because like the song that's just guitars and no drums and bass, I completely forgot that existed. I mean, I didn't forget that it existed.
Which track is that?
It's called, I think I wrote it down. What the hell is it called? Is it 4 something? 4 Knots?
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's like way towards the end. And I thought it was going to do something like lead into like a bigger, like full on rock song, and it didn't. And so it's like, I can't even say I forgot that it existed. It's almost like I didn't know it existed. Wait a second. I wonder, is it possible it's not on the LP?
I'm listening. I'm just checking it out now. I'm super, what's interesting is I've been listening to Kerosene 454 like pretty heavily through the years, like including.
Dude, it's not on the LP. That's why I've never heard it.
Oh, really?
It must have been on the CD only. How funny is that?
Yeah, the Kerosene 454 stuff was like in heavy rotation for me, like within the last like 15 years. For some reason, when I was like an avid runner, I really liked running to Kerosene 454
Oh, I could see that.
because it's just really like frenetic, and so I I can talk about this record all day long. I guess it's just I forget what song titles are and stuff like that, but yeah.
I
And
forget too.
I don't know that I ever owned it on vinyl or CD, and I don't own it. So I'm
That's so
wondering
funny.
what my
You just listening
copy
to a
was.
tape of it or something, or a CDR or
No, I
something.
must have had it. I must have had, because I remember seeing them on the tour for this at the Middle East. Maybe you went to that too, but like I remember being very into this record, and I don't know what format I owned it on.
Let me say this about this record. So we've talked about Kerosene 454 a couple of times, and I never had any of their 7 inches, but I had that first LP, Situation at Hand, and I'd seen them once or twice, but it didn't really do anything for me. And then
really?
Situation at Hand was one of these weird records where whenever I listened to it, I would go, oh yeah, this record is awesome. And then as soon as it was over, I would forget about it. Like just routinely.
Oh, really?
And then like a month later, I'd listen to it again and be like, oh yeah, this record is awesome. And then forget about it. But when did this record originally come out?
You know what's interesting? This is 97, I think.
Okay.
I think the first time I ever listened to Situation at Hand, I was stoned. And
So
this was like
you just broke edge.
I was hanging out with Brad from Temperance, and I think I had bought this like the day before, and I was staying at his place. I remember I was like sleeping over someone's house, and we put it on, and this is like my era of being straight edge, but for some reason on that day, just once, I just decided to get high and listen to it. It's kind of funny. That was like my first spin of that record.
Oh, 96 is when this record came out. So it's probably when 96. I saw them. Which makes sense. I wonder if we saw them with Blue Tip. When you saw them, did they play with Blue Tip at the Middle East?
I feel like they must have. But I think
they were opening for Blue Tip. And I was stoked on seeing Blue Tip. I didn't really have a feeling about Kerosene 454. And then when we saw them, I was just floored. That the whole set, and then they probably ended with that song Injection, the like single riff loop type song.
Yeah.
And I was just like, holy shit, this is what Kerosene 454 sound like. And I hadn't really no idea. I didn't even know there was a new record at that, like while they were playing. So I was just like, man, I misjudged this band. Like this is amazing. And then they had the record for sale, and I bought it, and then basically like fell in love with them.
You're right. Yeah.
But this stuff in particular, like live, is incredible.
Oh yeah, that especially that song Injection live is like one of the highlights of their set. I just realized we didn't really quite do an intro to Kerosene 454, although maybe we don't need one because we did the other episode on the 7-inch. It was probably an intro.
Hopefully we'll edit it and get that one out before this one sees the light of day, and then there's no need to introduce it. But we can introduce it like real quickly.
So what did this come out?
Post-hardcore band that started in LA, existed in DC, toured with Hoover, Blue Tip a lot, produced by Jay Robbins from Jawbox, and
ex-members of what was the
ex-members of Wind of Change, band that produced Hoover, Kerosene 454, Samuel, and probably some other shit.
Wow. Yeah, kind of a youth crew, kind of straight edge band, right? So interesting that
they were supposed to play Youth of Today's last show in Los Angeles.
Wow.
But Wind of Change canceled, but they were invited by Youth of Today to play.
That's one of the things about Kerosene 454 that I like so much is like the transformation. Like everything was transforming at that time anyway, obviously, like people were evolving like their tastes and stuff, but the fact that one band like Wind of Change could produce all these other bands that were like definitely like sort of the leading edge of post-hardcore, for the 90s is super interesting and impressive. I'm not sure I've ever heard Wind of Change, but I can imagine what they sound like.
I have. It's like, the first time I heard it was a long time ago. Like Al Barkley was listening to them one day, and he was like, oh, this is like Alex from Hoover and Regulator Watts' band. Right. But it's like, it wasn't doing anything for me. I think I tried again on YouTube, but then I was just like, I'm just going to listen to Kerosene 454. One of those reactions. And Kerosene 454 existed from 93 to 98.
98 they broke up?
Yep.
Oh, damn. Yeah. And did we even name the record we're talking about? Came By to Kill Me? I feel like
I think so. I think I said it. I said Came By to Kill
okay.
Me is on streaming. I hope I said it.
I think you did. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, but out of all of their stuff, Situation at Hand is probably my favorite. Though that doesn't mean that I think like the other stuff is like not good, because it's all really good. But for some reason, I just have such an attachment to that record. But this one, Came By to Kill Me, is definitely like something I've listened to like hundreds of times over the years.
I think one thing that we said maybe that we were going to do with this record was see if we could drill down into like some specific moments that like help explain like why we like this record so much. So I definitely jotted down some notes, like, because you know, sometimes it's like real easy to end up talking our way around the record. So I don't know, like, do you have any like favorite moments or chunks or like just things where you're like, this to me is what this band was like so good at?
Well, for them, one of the most impressive things is Darren Zentek's drumming is just fucking amazing. Like, it's so next level. Like, I know Brendan Canty was like a good drummer, and there are definitely like a lot of good like drummers in that scene, but he's just playing on a level that seems so much more studied or something. It's like jazz, like really.
Yeah, he's funky.
Yeah,
I think that's like the huge difference. Like now I feel like I have a vocabulary to describe it, but you know, it's like you'll hear it like there are a lot of other drummers that would have ruined this music on some level. Like they would have played it more like straight ahead rock and roll. And like, now granted, like, so just for the sake of argument, if Brendan Canty was the drummer of this band, they'd all have to change how they play to make it work. I honestly think. I don't think it works. I think that Darren Zentek's drumming is like, it like tones down the aggressiveness, but in a good way, because it's like, it's such a noisy record, but then it's danceable. And I mean, that was one of the things I remembered about seeing them too, especially when I started to then purposefully seek out every chance to see them, was that like, that was that point, you know, 97, 98, there were all these bands that were kind of pushing this idea that they were like Sleater Kinney's gimmick was that they were like an old fashioned rock and roll band. But like Janet Weiss, is like a very straightforward, boring drummer in that context. Like, she's much better on Quasi than she was in Sleater Kinney,
right?
Because like she's not funky,
right?
It's like kind of boring. And I remember even seeing like Kerosene 44 with Blue Tip, and depending on who was drumming for Blue Tip, because they always had different drummers, you could like dance during Kerosene 44, and Blue Tip is much more just like you nod your head. Just the nature of those drums, and like Darren Zentek, he's just a funky drummer. It's awesome.
Yeah. Also, they have one thing I love about Kerosene 454, and it's evident on this record quite a bit more than Situation at Hand, but there's like a pop sensibility, like there's a hookiness to some of their stuff, and like some of the refrains and some of the songs just have like such nice sort of melodic like vocal ideas.
There's so yes, that's one of the things that's shocking about it too, right? Is that like the perfect example is the way that this record launches. Like, that's one of my favorite moments right off the bat. You can hear Darren yelling a count in. And then when Eric Deno comes in singing, he's got the weirdest yelling voice. You know what I mean? And so it's got like, it sounds like his like throat is tearing apart, not like screamo, but it's just like it's chopped or something. It's very strange.
I always thought he had kind of a tough sounding voice. It almost sounds like it came out of hardcore, which I really like.
It's like
they could have been so big.
Reminds me of Integrity when he's yelling.
Yeah, it's actually a similar tone.
Actually. And then it's shocking because then when he sings, it's like pretty. But it's cool sounding.
He's got a good voice, and there's just a lot of, especially on this record, there's a lot of unexpected sort of hooks and things in it that I'm like, sometimes when I would listen to it while I was running, I would just like space out and imagine an alternate sort of universe where they got really big, you know, because to me, it's like, look, I don't think they sound like the Foo Fighters or anything, but on some level, like just big guitars and stuff. Like in that alternate universe, bands like Chavez got really big and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like just this. I don't know. It's like they're. I would definitely say Kerosene 454 are like one of the most interesting bands to come out of like not only just like post-hardcore but just like the DC scene because of that stuff. I think like it's got like the hooks. I mean, a lot of those bands have like Fugazi's full of hooks, I guess, but I don't know. A lot of it does.
You know what
And
again, this is probably one of those things where I'm talking around the band and not like about specifics, but I actually listened to some Fugazi today, in part because I thought the instrumental song on here, Angelic in G sharp, I was like, I swear to God, this sounds just like a Fugazi instrumental.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the one on the Kill Taker, but it's
Sweet
not.
And Lowdown.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like that. Then I thought, well, maybe it's the one on Red Medicine, but it doesn't sound like that. But it kind of really, it's very strange because the dismissive thing to say about this whole genre of bands is that they sound like Fugazi.
Yeah,
but
people
one of the things I love about this record is there's some really different songs. You know what I mean? Like the opener, like Tracer, or there's another little kind of rager on here. I think it's All Eyes West. Or no, Fair Fire. Fair Fire is almost like another little like kind of hardcore song almost. You have like these like quick ragers, then you've got something like Continued with the harmonics happening, and then you've got Injection, which doesn't sound like anything on the record.
Yeah.
But it all sounds so holistic and it all sounds like it belongs together. And I kind of think of a lot of Fugazi in the grand scheme of things as being more like the Beatles, where it just feels like a bunch of random songs.
Yeah, they kind of are.
It's not like a criticism, but I think there's like the audio language of this band was very tight, and I think they could do very different things, and it still felt like it belonged on the same record.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely say these records are really cohesive sounding. But I think each release with them was a little bit, like this does kind of sound like Situation at Hand, but it sounds like an evolved version of it or something like that. And At Zero is like an indie record to me or something. It kind of sounded more like.
I feel like At Zero almost sounds like they made a record based on Injection.
Kinda, yeah. It's been a long time since I've listened to that.
I think there's an interesting thing about this record too. There's an interview with Eric Dano and Darren Zentek on that Conan Neutrons podcast. They talked about that this record was where they started writing with Darren.
Oh,
and I think that's probably, except for maybe even Some Walk might have been something that. No, I think Some Walk was written in LA.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe a lot of Situation at Hand, actually it must have been. I think a lot of Situation at Hand was written before they moved to DC and Darren joined the band, because they were talked about that, which was like the first songs they'd written with him, which would make sense then, that it kind of catches like that shift of like, it sort of sounds like Situation at Hand, but it's getting somewhere different because his influence is probably more pronounced. Its closing has one of my favorite riffs of all time. I'm just gonna I just need to remind myself what it sounds like.
Yeah, do it.
Hold on.
Which song?
Closing, the third song.
All right.
Not this part, but this part's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, they have such cool guitar parts.
And then when he sings over it, it's awesome. There's a bunch of riffs on this record that I cannot listen to this record for years. Like that riff is in my head all the time.
Yeah.
It's weird how that happens. And I think one of the Worthington might have another one of those ones that like I think about it constantly for no reason, or I wake up in the morning and that riff is playing in my head.
I gotta remind myself which riff that is.
Worthington. Yeah. Let's see, which one is that? Oh, the drum thing is so good.
It's got that muted.
Oh, I remember which one this is.
Palm muted thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's the thing. I feel like
The
we
recording
could have
is really
just
good.
done a stream of listening to this record and just being like pausing it and being like, that moment
We
is
could
so
definitely do a
good.
reaction video to this.
Yeah. This, you know what's funny is we talk maybe too much about Lungfish. Somehow we're constantly have veered off into talking about Lungfish because we adore Lungfish, right? And we love the figuring out which riff can be played for 4 minutes. You know,
I was
and
just working on a piece before we got on the call where I'm trying to decide just that. Like, it's a very repetitive song that has like one change in it, and I'm like, does this work? I don't know.
and it's funny because then the genius of this, so the songwriting craft on this is so amazing, and the bridges are incredible, like all over the place. It's like the riff ends, it goes to a new part, but it's not a new part. It is a bridge between two major whatever sections. Both guitarists will start out playing one riff, then one of them will switch to another riff, then the original one will also switch to a third riff, and then it will kick into a new section. And it's like the amount of detail that's contained in there, and that it doesn't sound hyperactive, spazzy, jarring. You know what I mean? It's more just like when you listen to it, it's just packed with detail.
Well, that's
and it makes me want to play guitar. You know what I mean? Like, it's such like, yeah, and I think you said this about them. Like, this is like important guitar music of the 1990s.
I definitely agree. And what I appreciate about it is it's all DIY. What I mean by that is like, sounds to me like people, maybe aside from Darren Zentek, but like the guitars sound like very self-taught, kind of just like Fugazi does. Like, have you ever thought about that? Like, how remarkable in a weird way it is that Ian MacKaye like went from just being like a singer for a hardcore band that all of a sudden he's like playing guitar in Fugazi and like doing interesting shit. Like, it's kind of like,
what was the other? Did he play guitar in Embrace?
No,
or Egg Hunt or any of those bands?
I don't think so.
I don't really follow him enough to fully know.
Yeah, it's impressive. I mean, but it's encouraging too, because it like this kind of guitar work, I think, was important for me as a player because it helped me to understand that I could do it too. You know, like it's just.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just thought of something, but I think I sometimes assume that he played guitar on records before that, because have you ever heard that thing about those was the song called "You'd Make a Good Cop" off In on the Killtaker?
Great Cop or something like that.
How he has tapes of that riff going back to Minor Threat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like he first tried to use it in Minor Threat and it didn't really work out. Then he tried to use it in Embrace and it didn't work. So he's been like sitting on and maybe it's in the In on the Killtaker book, or the guy who wrote In on the Killtaker book. He talked about that Ian pulled out all these tapes and played him every single time he thought we should use this riff. So it is interesting that he actually had been playing guitar in the background going back to at least Minor Threat, if not Teen Idols, which is neat. But it is a reinvention of yourself to be like, I'm going to start playing guitar and I'm going to find this dude who was like a self-taught, like, I'm the most famous guy on our label, but I'm going to start a band with this self-taught bass player who hasn't played in a band. I don't think. That's wild too. Yeah,
Joe Lally, I don't think was doing anything before Fugazi.
And I could be wrong about this, but I was kind of under the impression that he picked up the bass so him and Ian could do music.
Possible, yeah. I mean, that type of stuff though, like Fugazi, Kerosene 454, and the fact that it's so high quality, like it's working within your means. Like maybe Ian MacKaye only really knows bar chords or power chords, but he's making them work. And same with all these bands actually, because none of the guitar stuff is complicated. It's tight, but it's not like super complicated. And I think that's one of the things I love about sort of DC hardcore, like in general, or like post-hardcore, the stuff that came out of DC after hardcore, is that it's full of this stuff. Like Hoover's like that too. Like none of it is virtuos. It's not like a
virtuosic.
Yeah,
Virtuosic.
Virtuosic. It's
I
all.
don't even know if I said it right at that point.
It's not virtuous. Is that the right word? Anyway, it's punk. It's like it's truly punk rock. And like, you know, I feel like what's also interesting, just from like maybe a nerdy gear perspective, but you know, DC hardcore bands are sort of known for post-hardcore, like the DC bands, Hoover, Fugazi, Kerosene 454, like all of those bands kind of had like a universal setup of a Marshall half stack and either a Les Paul, in some instances, like maybe like Swizz, or like a Gibson SG. But that's like the sound. It's like usually an SG with like a Marshall like half stack. I don't know what specifically which model was favored, but it creates like a I think that's kind of like the sound of DC, was that guitar wise. It's like that, specifically an SG or a Les Paul, something with humbuckers and like a half stack Marshall. And then we were talking about like with Hoover, how Alex uses 2 amps, like he splits them, and that could be part of it too. That's kind of getting into the weeds of technical stuff, but yeah, I would say the sound of DC Discord is Marshall amps.
Well, it's interesting
Gibson
too,
guitars.
I think I don't, maybe it's not end on end. There's man, I can't remember what this podcast is called, but the interviews are almost always with guitarists. It's one of those dudes that was like maybe in like the Hope Conspiracy.
Okay.
One of those Boston like hardcore bands from the like late 90s, early 2000s. Niraj, I think his name is. And some other dude, these 2 guys, they interview usually guitarists. And I remember there's one with Stephen Miller, who was in Unbroken. He was talking about his setup, and he was like, well, it's just a DC setup. That's like how he described it. He was like, it's an SG with a Marshall half stack.
Yeah, just, so you know about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that before. And I think maybe on End people talk about that too, right? Like people who aren't from DC, they talk about like yeah, you get, this is what you get. Like,
right.
It's like the
sound.
The deal.
Yeah, it's such a great guitar sound too. Like I have, my setup is, I don't have a Marshall half stack. I have a little Marshall amp back there though that is a modeling amp. So it's a really good modeling amp that digitally recreates the sound of different amps. Mm-hmm. And I'll set that thing on a Marshall Plexi, which I think is probably what Ian Mackay uses. Well, those guys uses, but there's something about that Marshall sound that's just so awesome with humbuckers. Like humbuckers, for anyone that doesn't know, are pickups in a guitar that are I believe have 2 coils in them, so they don't hum. Like, you know, single coils tend to have like a kind of nastier sound to them. Not quite as thick, not as good for heavy music. That's
you know what? A couple things related to that I think are interesting, as I was like, because I've listened to this record a lot in the last week now since it's been on streaming. I've probably listened to it 4 or 5 times in full, and some of the things that stand out to me is like, one, they talked about this on that Conan Neutron podcast, that they really didn't want there to be, at least on the first 2 records, like studio tricks. Like as far as they wanted to go was what they did with the drums on the beginning of Worthington, which was like, I guess, using PZM mics. But in general, like they didn't want to do tricks. And they actually talked about that Jay Robbins really didn't want to do tricks either, that their demo recordings at his house are way crazier than the actual studio recordings. Like at the demo recordings, he would do stuff with echo and stuff, and the studio recordings are very dry. Yeah. What's cool about it is I feel like you can really tell what the band sounds like. Even if there are overdubs, it doesn't sound like there are overdubs, because almost all of the time you can hear 2 guitars. You almost never hear like a stray sound that would lead you to believe they're adding something in to like beef it up. It's like it sounds like a very honest recording, which for me at least gives me like a lot of appreciation into how much effort had to go to come into the writing process to find those points where, like in this instance, we're both guitarists are going to do the same thing, And then in this instance, we're both going to do different things and create this like wall of noise, which I just feel like the amount of like playing and reflecting that you have to do to find the right thing to do so that it works. Because it's an interesting record because it's like it's noisy and melodic, but it's not jarring. I don't know. You know what I mean?
No, that's why I feel like they could have been kind of really successful in a weird way, like with the poppy kind of like hooks to a lot of the stuff, and just the quality of it. I mean, that's such a lame thing to say, like could have been huge, but then at the same time, when you really listen to things in retrospect, you can hear where like, I mean, I think they could have been as big as Fugazi at least, and they weren't. They were, I would say Kerosene 454 were maybe not even slightly, maybe like completely underappreciated in their time. Like people that knew, but
I think
never
they
really.
were totally underappreciated.
I think
they
they
were
were
like
too.
your favorite band sort of situation.
Exactly.
Well,
Definitely.
even just the fact that Jay Robbins was like completely happy to produce them, produce their second record, was demoing with them, giving Eric tons of tips on how to like work on his vocals, like kind of like he was really producing them, and that he would encourage, like he'd hear a thing that was an instrumental and he'd be like, nah, you need to sing on this one. And that he was like really like pushing them, you know, and the fact that they were touring with Blue Tip all the time. And I think Blue Tip were maybe a bit more accessible, and they
Yeah.
did weird shit like tour with Tool and whatnot.
Did they?
Yeah. Not for like for a week or so or something
Oh,
like
that's weird.
that. I saw them play a basement show at Al Barkley's. That was the last day of the Tool tour.
Oh,
So they
really?
toured with Tool for they played at like stadiums for
That's
for 2
crazy.
weeks, and then the like last show was in Al Barkley's basement, which was
Don't they have
rad.
a song called Nickelback, which is really funny?
They do, and I think it predates the band
It
Nickelback, right?
does. Yeah, it
Which
definitely
is
has to.
crazy.
Yeah.
Here's how I want to okay. Injection. Your favorite Kerosene 454 song, or just my favorite Kerosene
Oh,
454
it's not
song?
my favorite. It's up there, but I get a little with songs like that rely so much on one singular riff. I think it can either work or not work, and in this instance it totally works. It's just I just think I have so much more love for Situation at Hand. So like anything that's my favorite probably is coming off of that record. I
Right,
mean, I
and it's gonna be like, and it's like the more fuzzy, noisy stuff, probably.
kind of like do you know that song on Situation at Hand that starts with a drum click thing that goes really long? It's like
I don't
but
remember. I tried to listen to that record today, but it wasn't on YouTube in
fucking
full.
amazing. I mean, we could have a debate. I would argue we're not going to, but I would argue it's the better record of the two. But it has a song that starts off with like it's like the drums go tick 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 tick, and you're like, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden the guitars come in like all at once, and it's just like it's stuff like that kind of level of invention and just
Mhm.
for something that's like supposed to be referencing hardcore, because in a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
ways these bands do sound like hardcore bands at the core, like especially with like the pummeling drums. And
It's funny. I was thinking about it today, how weird it is that Injection is like my favorite song when it's like the song that sounds the least like Kerosene 454. Like
that's true, it kind of
it's like
sounds
such a
more
funny thing for me to like, but to define, not define them because I don't define them by it, but it's like that riff is like pretty much unlike any
oh,
other Kerosene 454 riff. It's like it's weird because it's like the least noisy song because it's so clean and it's so much about essentially playing a riff like it's a loop
right.
and then messing and then playing with the loop. But again, it completely works because of one, their overall sensibility and crafting stuff, but then two, Darren's drums.
The drums and again though the guitar, because on Situation at Hand and again I can't name tracks, but there's another one that we talked about before where the guitar sounds like the pattern it's playing in sounds like an old like printer printing.
Mhm.
And that's what I mean, like I feel like with this genre there was a lot of like really interesting guitar reinvention happening. Like I don't know if they intended it to sound like a printer, but it sounds just like a printer. I definitely recommend listening to Situation at Hand after we get off this for both of us, because I got to remember the names of things. But yeah, I don't know. I think that was evident in Fugazi too, because Fugazi would do like really. When you were talking about studio tricks, I was thinking how much Fugazi used studio tricks, and then also Lungfish towards the end, like Feral Hymns is full of like production type ideas, sound collage stuff.
Fugazi, what was it? It's funny because I was talking about that the instrumental on this sounded like a Fugazi instrumental. One of them's called Combination Lock because Ian played the guitar with a combination lock as the pick.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. It takes there's so much. I think what's interesting about this record is it has like such a sound, and they're trying so much stuff, but it doesn't have like a novelty effect. Like, and I remember seeing them. They're not the kind of band, and this isn't like a diss, but like a band from around the same time that I quite like was Franklin.
Oh yeah.
Who were heavily influenced by dub. But for them to play their songs required a legal pad to adjust all the pedals between each song. Like, really what they needed was like 7 guitars or something, right?
Oh,
and like
yeah.
switch guitars out. But Ralph would be down on his hands and knees with a legal pad, changing the effects signal chain to play a song. And Kerosene 454 didn't need to do anything like that. They could just like rage through the set with really not needing to do much more than tune.
Right.
And to get that much range out of what they were doing, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
I will say, I think the thing that about Injection that's so interesting is how by doing something so stripped down, how much it brings to the fore, how good they were at the like art of dynamics and like shifting their dynamics. Like when it goes into the melodic part of that song, I don't particularly like that part, but it's so unbelievably necessary in order to then bring the main riff back in again.
Yeah.
Like it absolutely has to be there as this palate cleanser that sets up like, all right, we're going right back into this like looping riff. And the way that they ratchet up the tension by when both guitars play the riff and then it falls off again. And it's one of the only times they have something resembling a breakdown on this record.
Okay. Yeah.
Nearly all the time, every instrument is going at once. And it's just the nature of what they're playing makes it softer because it gets melodic. But there's very few instances where anybody stops. And that song is one of the few where people just don't do shit and let the other people do things. And I feel like it helps you see how good they were, because you're like, okay, there's like not a lot that they're working with here and it's done so well. So then you kind of see like just how skillful they were when you've got like one of these ragers that just was like, or a pretty song that's 5 minutes long that just completely works.
Well, that was the thing about them like live, was it was just like unrelenting, like, energy. And I won't tell the story again about seeing them in a blizzard, but I will just say that there was nobody there and they put like 110% into their performance. It was like pretty impressive. But
imagine seeing them on that tour with Hoover.
They toured with Hoover?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that would have been great.
Before Darren joined the band, they moved to DC with that other drummer, to Eric, I think his name was. He was gonna do, and he was like that, and they toured the US for 6 weeks in winter with Hoover.
Holy shit, that's a long tour.
Yeah, I think those are where those videos that Jim Wall put up on YouTube, like that one I put in like the top 5 thing of Hoover. And it's like Hoover at that point, the 7-inch had just come out, and they're playing these sets of like the songs from the second 7-inch plus the long epic songs off the LP. And it's like, I just can't even imagine seeing those two bands together at that time.
Right?
How good that must have been.
That's crazy. Yeah, I only got to see Hoover once, but it was good. I'm wondering if that must have not have been that tour.
Yeah, or maybe Hoover didn't do the whole thing. That's like another possibility.
It was a weird show. It was like Hoover, and the only other band I remember on the bill was, you remember Doc Hopper? It was like yeah, it was Hoover
New
and
Jersey,
Doc
like kind of poppy melodic hardcore band.
Yeah, it was at Harvard. It was like in some like cafeteria on the Harvard campus or something. But
Weird places you can see shows.
I know. Did you go to that makeup show at Brown University in like '95? That was like in a hit. It was like in a hidden. It was the hardest location to find where the venue was because you had to like follow signs around campus, and then you would go in, and it was like this back door to like some university building, and there was a show going on inside. It's so funny. It was the makeup, the Hydrogen Terrors, and La Savi Fab, I think was that show.
Oh, that's a wild lineup.
It's a good bill. Yeah.
That would be pretty killer.
I think that was 95.
Anything else to say about Came By to Kill Me?
Probably.
I think we're going to talk about the artwork when I get my copy in. We'll compare the original to the new one. Does that
original have an insert or anything? Or what does it look like?
I can't remember if it's an insert or an inner sleeve. Let's find out. One, I've always, for years... Oh, wait. Okay, so it's funny. On Spotify, it looks like this.
Yeah.
Which, that's the opening, so it would make sense. But that cover is meant to be viewed like this. So I've always thought that this is what the cover is supposed to be.
Where's the slit? Where does the record come out of?
So it would be at the top.
Oh, I think it does the other
It does.
way.
It just has a 12x12 insert.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I'm trying to remember if this is yet another record where the... is that Alex Dunham's handwriting on there? That it is.
That would make sense.
Yeah, it's totally Alex's handwriting. I bet he's not credited either.
This
is why everyone thought that like Alex Dunham's handwriting was other people's. Like people thought it was Jason. Like when we posted the Abilene, like first little bit of stuff, and people would see the handwritten Abilene, they'd be like, "Oh, it looks like Jason Farrell's handwriting," because everyone thought that he did the Hoover handwriting.
That was a split release on Slow Dime, right? What did I just ask? Oh, it was a split release with Slow Dime, wasn't it?
Yep.
Slow Dime and Discord. Okay.
Yeah, I think Kerosene 454 and Regulator Watts ended up being like the flagship Slow Dime bands.
Slow Dime.
Everybody else was kind of one off. No, they didn't. I think they put out about 30 releases, maybe.
Oh, 30 is kind of a lot, actually.
Yeah, I think they folded. I think the Canyon record was maybe the last thing that they did.
Trouble Man's still around, though, isn't it?
No, Trouble Man folded. Not too long after Italians Do It Better.
Oh.
Maybe it lasted 5 years from that, if I'm not mistaken.
I feel like
I would say by 2012, Trouble Man was probably done.
It's kind of random, but I feel like Malthus had a release on Trouble Man or something. My friend Nate, I feel like he did something on Trouble Man.
Yeah. All the that whole sort of mid-thousands noise, freak, folk scene, all that stuff. Everybody had a record on Trouble Man.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Them, Double Leopards, Religious Knives, Wolf Eyes, John Weiss,
I think
Prurient.
I think my friend Nate was in Religious Knives too, wasn't he?
They had a relationship to Malthus, so
I think it was Nate. Oh, I can't.
Religious Knives might have been people from Malthus and Double Leopards.
Oh, okay.
Possibly.
Yeah. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I love Malthus. Religious
I've still
Knives.
never heard them.
Who, Malthus?
Yeah.
Oh, they're so good. I mean, Religious Knives, Bandcamp. I'm just checking to see if it's him. Doesn't say who's in the band. Anyway, yeah, Malthus is fantastic. It depends maybe on what your tolerance for noise is, but I think they're one of the best of that.
Mine
era.
is quite high, as we know.
Yeah, so you'd like it. I mean, the thing that I like about Malthus is every record kind of sounds different. I'm
gonna write down that I should listen to Malthus. Maybe that'll.
Yeah, I don't know which record. I mean, they're on Spotify. Which when I told Nate that, he was shocked. He's like, I don't know how that stuff ended up on Spotify.
It's funny how that works out.
Yeah, I think that's probably it for Kerosene 454. I feel kind of bad. Like I have more things I could probably say that I can't remember at the moment. But
How about this? Do you want to? I had an idea of bands or artists you've seen live that were doing interesting things
oh
in the
yeah,
live performance that went beyond just their magnetisms. We've talked about, again, too much, Lungfish, who are a band who their magnetism coupled with the audio experience makes them a great live band.
yeah,
But I was wondering about bands where something in their presentation made them a more compelling live experience.
right. I'm trying to think of good examples of that. Like I
And I
mentioned,
think about this a lot now because of like, making music and thinking about like how would I play this, and like maybe being like too insecure to assume that it will work, or like, you know what I mean? Like I think a lot about like if I was playing this live, what would I do in order to elevate it?
right. Yeah, the live thing. You sent that VSS clip, and I thought that was really cool. Their sort of DIY lighting situation.
Yeah. So we were talking about this the other day, and it's like for the younger of you or people who weren't there, the VSS was this like post-hardcore band that came out of the band Angel Hair, and three of the Angel Hair people started this new band, the VSS, that was more, they were still kind of like a hardcore band, but they were very influenced by like post-punk and goth stuff. And they had like an image.
Yeah,
Um, and they were known for having a light show. And like the one time I was supposed to see them, I think it was even before they had records out, I had to leave because someone I was with got sick, and we ended up like having to drive back to Rhode Island. So I never even got to see them. And I know that they had this huge impact because like everybody was like, have you seen the VSS? Like that first tour
yeah, I missed them
made them kind of
totally.
notorious. And one of the things was they had like a light show, and it's like, they're playing basements and they're playing like VFWs and all this shit. And so I went and looked for a video to see what it looked like. And I think the thing that struck me about it was that, so Sonny K, the singer, he's controlling the light show, and the light show is 100% integrated into the song structures, which I
Yeah, I
thought was
noticed that.
wild. So it was like something hits and he hits something, and now you have like a strobe light, and then the part changes and he switches back to a steady, more like red light, and then a different riff hits. And that must have been super cool and very surprising in 1996 or whatever year it was.
Were they
Um,
from Denver? Were they from
I
Colorado?
I'm pretty sure they moved to San Francisco. I could be wrong about this. I kind of think they had moved to San Francisco to be a band,
Right.
but I might not be right about that. But yeah, I can only imagine why that had such an impact on people, because they showed up on like wearing, they didn't really have a uniform, but like they all wore like button down shirts tucked into slacks. And then they had this like light show that was like super, like they could control it. They set it up. It was very surprising. And I imagine like, hey, or not imagine, it's no surprise that that had a kind of huge effect on people
Yeah.
going forward from there.
The thing I always wonder about is where is the line between like, wow, that's really cool and impressive versus like this is kind of corny, like it's kind of a I don't think the VSS were corny. I thought that was really cool, but like one could say, for example, like, oh, the makeup and the influence that had on stuff was pretty massive. I mean, International Noise Conspiracy basically like stole the whole shtick, and the Nation of Ulysses thing I think is a big part of it. But at what point does it seem like trying too hard? And
That's a good question. And it's probably like contextual, because like if you think like with the VSS, they were trying to essentially like carve out, they're playing these shows, and it's like, who are they probably playing with? They're playing with like I don't remember who they were supposed to play the show I saw with, but like for all I know, it's probably like Cable, for example.
right,
So they're playing these hardcore shows, and they're trying to essentially define a space within the night where something vastly different happens. Like
but then
a different looking type of band,
yeah,
completely owning the space. But the other thing is that they were good.
right.
If they weren't
you got to back
good,
it up.
that would have been corny.
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of it. Let's see. Like, I'm trying to think of other examples that were contemporary to them. You had like the Makeup. I think Men's Recovery Project definitely had like something going on live that was like outside of expectation. I think it's definitely something that's worth like exploring. But then there are some bands that aren't meant to really be that way. They're more like like I guess AC/DC had a shtick because he wore like the schoolboy uniform and all that stuff. But
it would be so hard to imagine. But like, what could Kerosene 454 have done
nothing.
that wouldn't have like undermined what they were, the driving seriousness of what they were doing?
Right.
But then again, maybe if I had seen them and they did have not a shtick, because I don't want to call it a shtick. Like with the VSS, I think like they had I don't know if it was a concept or whatever. I mean, clearly they were pulling from post-punk, right? Like even down to the way that they were dressing, it was like Joy Division promo photos, kind of.
Yeah.
But it's like so funny because like every example I've seen, like especially from the 90s, where a band did do something different that drew interesting attention to them, it happened so rarely that I remember almost every time I saw it. Like I didn't see Hoover with the thing that they did where they would play the recordings of evangelical preachers behind them. But I remember, as we talked about in the first episode, I saw Rye, and they played recordings of 70s blaxploitation movies while they
sort
played.
Of like a piss take, right? A little
bit.
Yeah,
yeah. Like their version of the Hoover thing is to have Across 110th Street playing on a boombox, so that in between songs, instead of them doing banter, that sort of thing was happening. And I actually forgot. And I saw other bands do it where it was kind of gimmicky, like that band Jihad. Like they were pretty terrible. And they played super loud, and I seem to recall them having some sort of tape playing.
But I think it comes down to...
I remember them sucking.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is, does it seem natural?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you look like a performer on stage putting on a performance, or is this like so compelling that this is just like a natural... I don't know.
Can you think of other bands where you like, or artists where you saw them where they like did something that really worked? Or that was corny. I did see Men's Recovery Project once, and
I saw them. Yeah,
they're
a few times.
The set that I saw, their gimmick was very funny, which was, so bars in Rhode Island close at 1 a.m, and they were playing at the Met Cafe, and their particular gimmick was to wait to get on stage until the sound man threatened to not let them play at all. And so they got on stage with 18 minutes before closing, I believe.
Oh, really?
And they just slammed through this set with like the ridiculous like t-shirt masks with drawings on them.
Yeah.
And then they were done by 1. And they were like, thank you, we're Men's Recovery Project. And they were off stage and it was done. And I remember that being like the kind of thing that even if I hadn't liked them, that would have been a funny and memorable show. But of course, like their whole band was provocation and humor. So if they were like, I don't know who they could be. I mean, I almost wonder if it would be funny if any band had done that. Like, but it wouldn't make any sense. Like, to do that.
Yeah, I think Men's Recovery Project were a bit of like it was like 50% comedy. I mean, when I saw them play at a church, and I don't know which historical figure Sam was dressed as, but he was like, had a powdered wig and
Patrick Henry.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
I think because he did a record as Patrick Henry.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually finish reading his book. I read about half of Mutations, and it is interesting to kind of hear his perspective on some of his younger antics now, because he's just like, I was mentally ill, like, I'm bipolar, and like, or whatever it is. But I'm trying to think of examples of where it really worked, but I think I kind of suffer from a bit of cynicism, and that I don't easily accept gimmicks or shticks. Like that band Ghost is like an example of where it's just so corny to me
Oh
that
yeah, or like Sleep Soaking, the like big like
yeah,
metal band that also sounds like an R&B group, and you're
yeah,
just like, how are people being taken in by this? This is
right.
like clearly goofy.
It's just kind of crappy. So, you
And I was
know,
thinking about that because
but I,
it's like, oh, sorry, go on.
oh, go ahead.
No, I have nothing to say. I was probably gonna
Oh,
just like ramble.
no, I was just thinking like on paper, I really like the idea of adding extra to your performance, like having some sort of production value added to it is not inherently a bad thing at all. It's like really good. I did see, well, years ago before he died, I saw John Fahey play at the Middle East, and he played
Hmm.
with Tony Conrad. And Tony Conrad, I think, played like a viola or a violin or something. And I remember that they had a curtain in front of the stage and like a light, so you just see a silhouette of him like standing there playing. Like stuff like that could either go really well or really bad. But I guess when it's somebody like Tony Conrad, you kind of can't really criticize. But I don't know.
Because you know what I hate? What I hate is the band playing in front of a make-up banner of their name.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
just like,
yeah.
this doesn't do anything.
I've definitely tried to add a little extra to some of my live performances, and it's something I've like thought about, but it usually doesn't have much to do with anything different I'm doing. It's usually just like extra stage props and stuff. And on that end, since we have to like talk about Nirvana every time, I'm kind of like impressed with their if you ever get a chance to look at what their stage design was for their last tour for In Utero, it's like really rad. It looks like
Look it up.
yeah, just look up In Utero tour Nirvana, and I'm sure you'll see it because they had it for the entire tour, but it kind of looked like the heart-shaped box video. Like they had props on stage, like that woman with the angel wings, and then it had like a tree on stage and stuff. I thought that was really cool. I got to mention Nirvana.
One of the things I remember it totally adding to like the mystique was Regulator Watts. I again saw them in Al Barkley's basement. I mean, me and Hoover had such a mystique that, you know, you see Alex Dunham and it's like, oh, fuck, that's the guy from Hoover. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Yeah.
now, you know, that's the guy that made the craziest parts of Hoover. That's the guy. And he set up the two Marshall half stacks and then put a pitchfork next on top of one of them, just
Oh,
like
really?
as like the lone prop was just this pitchfork leaning up
That's kind of
against one of
rad.
the amps. And
Oh,
I remember everyone like commenting on it, like to each other, like what, you know, it's just like something about it just made it. And they were such a
wasn't there a band called Pitchfork?
aesthetically unhinged. That was the pre-Drive Like Jehu band with Rick Froberg. Oh, I see it. Oh, this like Nirvana thing, like this is pretty cool.
Isn't that rad?
Yeah, it's like
That
not going too far.
No, it's all like, and I think another cool thing he did was it was more of a prop, but like his amp on stage was like this miniature like Marshall full stack that was like for like a baby or something, like, and it's red. But
I'm
Kurt,
looking for it.
you know,
Go
one
on.
of the things that nobody talks about with Nirvana or enough for me is how much of a like creative direction Kurt put behind the band. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
he was basically the guy responsible for basically all of the aesthetics with Nirvana, and I just don't think people really give him a lot of credit because I think he actually was a really good artist. Like that stage design looks awesome.
It does look awesome. And I think I think about this a lot just in terms of like I will go and just look for videos just to try to see interesting stuff and see, especially like being someone that makes like electronic music that isn't really played so much as constructed.
Right.
You become maybe more aware of that because the options are like, okay, like what do you do? Like, are you a DJ or like whatever? So it's like you're constantly looking to see like how do people present the songs in their performance. And the other thing is like a lot of times I'll get my daughter to like hang out downstairs, like when she's like needs something to do. We'll just look for live videos of like pop stars. So we'll be like, all right, well, let's like watch this Katy Perry concert from 2015, or like let's watch a Sia concert or whatever.
Right.
And those things are insane, right? Because they're so over the top. But on the other hand, they completely like construct a universe for the songs to exist within that is interesting or cool or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
or someone like Sia is interesting because of her like stage fright situation.
Right.
So like she doesn't want to dance, she doesn't want to move, she just wants to stay in the same spot with the mic stand. So then she has to like construct this universe for this song so that they do give someone, because otherwise it's like, all right, we'll just listen to the record.
Right.
So like she does need to like bring something, but this like this Nirvana stuff is like awesome looking. I mean, it's so funny because it's just a couple pieces, but those pieces are huge too.
They have like
That's
good
cool.
lighting and stuff too. And
yeah, there's like, hold on, maybe I'll just this one, which is like, it's a little hard. I mean, this could be a split second in this situation.
Oh yeah, the lighting looks awesome.
But like with the shadows, like that's rad.
Yeah, I think that tour, I wish I could have seen them on that tour, but I like the idea of creating an environment like it for the songs to exist in, almost as if it were like a film or a play or something.
We talked about in another episode the Rachels.
Oh yeah,
like, you know, and one of the things I thought was,
they had like
two
some
things
stuff,
were cool about
right?
the Rachels, right? One was that the nature of the instruments that they played sort of required them to be more spaced out. So like, even though I saw them at the Middle East and it was the same size as the Middle East always is, I swear to God, the stage seemed bigger and more panoramic. There's no way. It was obviously the same as it always is.
They would do some sort of film presentation live.
Yeah, they had a sheet hanging as a projection screen, and it was at an angle, so it was like so it was like architectural is like a little bit pretentious to say, but it wasn't straight on. It wasn't a backdrop. It was like at an angle so that it was interacting with what you were seeing on stage to an extent. And I don't remember what they were playing, like old, like, I mean, I don't know if they were playing vintage movies or if they went down to the train tracks and recorded stuff.
Yeah.
But it was playing like trains and whatnot.
Did you ever get into I thought of this as another example of a cool live presentation, but this guy Mick Turner, he was in what band was he in? The Dirty Three.
Oh,
you know that band?
Yeah, I was gonna say Napalm Death, but that's Mick Harris.
I
never got into him. I don't even know if I've ever heard Dirty Three.
They're okay. I mean, it's like, I don't know, they're indie rock, I guess. But I saw him play solo. He opened for Cat Power, and he just did. Man, it was pretty awesome, actually. He was just him playing guitar. There were no drums. It was just solo guitar. And then he had a CRT, like a television monitor on stage with him that I don't remember what the footage was, but I feel like it was similar, like trains or something.
This is like outside of this world. It's so funny. It's like not that many examples of that come from this world. Like even recently, those like didn't was Unwound playing like with video backdrops. Like
when I saw them, no, it was more like they had one still image projected that looked awesome. It looked really great. Oh, but they did have some. Okay, this is an interesting topic because what I'd like to kind of point out is I think like the Nirvana thing, even though that's sort of like a lot on stage, the idea of keeping things somewhat minimal. So like with Nirvana, it's like just a couple of stage props. And then who were we just talking about a minute ago? Well, Nirvana, I guess it's just the point I'm thinking of.
And Alex Dunham with a pitchfork.
Is doing little and for a lot of effect. And there's a way to do it and there's ways not to do it. And I totally lost my train of thought as soon as I lit this joint.
Let's see if this one reignites it, but Airborne Radar.
Oh yeah,
had a cool live thing, which is that one, they all wore janitors uniforms.
Very of its
stinky,
time.
disgusting janitor use uniforms because they couldn't wash them. And then they would, like I saw them play at 7th Street Entry in Minneapolis. They have the club turn off the stage show, turn off the lights, and then they would just have like these guys on stage. Just like Home Depot work lights on stage flashed on them. And it was, it's funny because it's like, it's not much, but it totally worked. Like it totally helped create a very different experience without being gimmicky.
Oh, one thing I was going to recommend for you to watch too And I've always thought it was a really good music video, and you've probably seen it a zillion times like everybody else. But the heart-shaped box music video, I think, is what a lot of that stage design came from. And I forget who directed that video, but I think it's quite good.
That's funny because, a band that could have done this and didn't was Battles. That first Battles record, had like 2 incredible music videos attached to it. The first one was for Atlas, where they're playing in that plexiglass box I don't think the box is rotating. I think the cameras are rotating around the box. And then that box and photography taken in it constituted the album photography for Mirrored. Was the box clear, or was the box partially clear and partially mirrored? Have you ever seen that Mirrored video? It's directed by Timothy Cicenti, who was like a photographer that did a lot of stuff for Warp Records at the time and a lot of stuff like for LP. And what did they do? They gave him the best brief. They said that the concept for the video needed to be about infinity and repetition. And he was like, how about you guys play in a mirrored box? Maybe it's just a straight performance video. It's amazing. It's like my favorite music video. But they did that one, and they did use that as the source of the album photography. And then they did this other video that was like a collaboration with that English, I don't know what they are, UVA, United Visual Artists. They do like light shows for like live events. And they're playing and again, it's like a performance-based video. They're playing in the desert from dusk till dawn, basically. Mm-hmm. It's like a time-lapse video of like a night, and then there's a grid of lights that are sound activated. And it's like such a simple concept. And it's like both of those things. But when I saw them, they were awesome, but they just played the songs.
Right.
Part of what was probably shocking to a lot of people is that they played guitars and samplers and keyboards at the same time. So they'd be sitting there like fingering like a riff while playing a keyboard at the same time. And that was kind of like the big, not gimmick, but because like I think their whole point was like, we make loops in real time. And like, that's like what we do. Right. But people are just like, holy shit, are they playing guitar and keyboard at the same time?
Oh, I see.
And there's multiple people doing it, which is a trip. Oh, and then there was the thing that John Stanier's crash. No. Yeah, his crash was up so high he had to stand up to hit it.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's kind of like
his gimmick was the gimmick for the whole band was they wanted to reinvent their playing. So the first thing that he did was make it hard to play a crash.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of Christian Marclay. He did just some of his stuff he's done with instruments. I think he had a drum set up like that in a gallery. It was like all of the cymbals were like 20 feet off like you couldn't even reach them. They were like way above the drum set or something like that.
That's pretty rad.
Christian Marclay is also another Mass Art alum that was famously kicked out of the sculpture department.
Oh, because he didn't make sculptures?
Well, he did, but it was in the 70s, and I think he was making like ready-made type stuff, so they sent him over to SIM, which is the department for interrelated media. Which is where that's like Ben Jones majored in SIM. I was in SIM a lot, although I was a painting major. Everybody thought I was in SIM. But it's called Studio for Interrelated Media. But one other band I thought of earlier that I meant, this is where I think I forgot to mention them, but Dead Moon is another one where their sole gimmick is just a lit candle. Like they have this big fat lit candle that's like on top of the bass drum, and as they play, it's like melting all over I don't know if they have a thing where they play until the candle's completely burned out or what, but they had some kind of thing with the candle.
I guess it's like crazy. It's like super. Ultimately, it's like very rare. Because even bands that play with like video projection, 9 times out of 10, whatever's being projected is not interesting or exciting.
No.
Like half the time it's just like random found footage.
I did see Sonic Youth once, and they had, I don't know what it was, but I think it was a live video feed from like a corner of a street in New York City or something.
Mm.
This was like, may have been like a shot from, it was like when that Murray Street video came out. So I feel like it might have been like a video from Murray Street in New York, like near 9/11, like ground zero, because their studio was right there. But yeah, it's an interesting topic because there's so much you can do with a performance. And then you also have to ask yourself, like, is it necessary, or is it enough to just watch a band play too? Like what, I don't know, just the AV aspect of it, I think is fascinating to me too. Like because I'm a musician who wasn't trained. I'm a musician I got all my like learning about music through art school, basically, or within the context of art school. So it seems really inherent to me to add a visual to a live performance thing. And it's something I wanted to do here more, but I just can't get anybody to come to my gallery here. But I wanted to do some kind of, I think I've told you before, I wanted to do like a duet between me and like the CRT monitor. Like it'll play like the video and I do like live like guitar or something to it. And I've played around with it a little bit, but it's kind of it's a hard thing to pull off, I think.
No, it totally is, and it's like funny because it's like what am I trying to say? There's probably like a standards thing too, where there's like a certain type of person that's like not satisfied with like the status quo. And the other thing is like making so much stuff for screens now, I almost feel like it matters even more, because like whatever you make, like if you like a performance, no matter what, it has a second life as a piece of visual media.
Right.
Like there's almost no chance it doesn't. It's extremely rare. And then so it's sort of like, okay, like tier 1, which is like where most hardcore punk metal bands stop at, is a banner. Which I guess is cool. It's like a good piece of branding. Like
it's all it is
like
branding
in the
band logo
in the feed. But there is like this other thing. It's just like, if you saw that photo of, into contemporary context, if somebody posted the photo of that Nirvana set, even now, you'd be like, whoa, what is that? That's pretty sick. And I think like, I don't think I'm necessarily changing direction, but if you think about the explosion of noise in the like mid thousands, the thing that didn't explode was laptop noise. Like even though John Weiss is a big figure, like he got a lot of hate for being like a laptop guy. Everybody
really?
disparaged all the Merzbow stuff because it was like done on a laptop.
Interesting.
And then there was like a reappraisal of it because like people stopped me. But so like if you were to go to say, like I'm thinking of like an example, like the End Times Festival happened in Minneapolis, where it's like John Weiss, Yellow Swans, Emile Bulio, Thurston Moore, Jim O'Rourke, C. Spencer, Double Leopards, all those guys, like our bands played. Part of it was every time someone got up on stage, you had no idea what was going to be brought with them on stage. You know what I mean? Like, so like Dead Machines played, and they have like suitcases like filled with fucking tape gear and all this shit. And then like C. Spencer plays, and he's like playing with a fucking bow across whatever. Like everybody's like doing different stuff. And because they're not rock bands in general, it was immediately compelling.
Right.
Well, it's noise, not a rock band.
Noise is noise almost like needs a little extra something. I actually sent you a link to you probably won't like it. I don't know if I like it, but do you know that guy Atrax Morg?
I know the name, never heard stuff, to be honest.
I just sent you a performance a few minutes ago that has you probably won't like it. And again, I don't know that I like it because it's so gross, but I think is one of the important people in noise that kind of formed the whole idea of the association between noise and like serial killers or like violence or like surgery videos and that sort of thing. Although arguably, I think Throbbing Gristle probably and SPK and stuff like
landed there first.
Yeah, but But this guy, his name was Marco Corbelli, and I think he committed suicide. But check out that video because there is something. I mean, if you can stomach it, it's like a performance somewhere in like a bar in Italy in like the mid '90s, and it's just him standing at a keyboard, doing very minimal things, and then behind him he's got a video projection of like stuff from like horror movies, and there's something about the combination of it, even though I can't say I technically like it, that I do like about it. Like it's like really kind of jarring. Maybe also because he's, I mean, obviously using really provocative like images and stuff, but yeah, noise definitely needs a little something extra, and if it's not a visual presentation, it's some sort of performative aspect. And speaking of which, I remember when I was at Mass Art, we had I took an experimental music class with this guy named John Voight, not the actor, same name, and he was like a collaborator of Thurston Moore's, and I wish I could remember the name of the guy. He used to have people come to our class sometimes and do like a live presentation for the class, like different artists he knew. And there was this guy that did a performance with a guitar and a body bag. He had like a body bag from a morgue, and then he did something where it was like feeding back, but it was like inside the bag, and it was like, I'll never remember the guy's name, but it was like an amazing performance. It was seriously like kind of jaw-dropping and, you know, startling and amazing. But, you know, it needs that. Otherwise, it's just like a noise piece, you know.
Sort of connected to the like Sonic Youth thing was, and this is like the opposite sort of thing, but I saw a performance at the Walker that was what was is Text of Light, the Lee Ronaldo Alan Licht Light, I don't know how you say that guy's last name.
Licht, I think.
Improv group. Anyway,
I'm not sure.
I think that's what they were called. They had this improv group, and I think their whole thing was they just improvised live scores to Stan Brakhage films.
Oh, okay. I remember
it was like
that,
an hour performance with just like a Stan Brakhage film playing behind them, and it was like, I think it was Lee Ronaldo, Alan Licht, William Hooker on drums, and maybe DJ Olive from that group We, and I think maybe did a record with Kim Gordon as well. But it's one of those things that sort of like just burned into your mind because of the synergistic quality of it, like the degree of intentionality.
Right.
Yeah, the other one I think about is even though I like don't really want to hear any of her new stuff, but like sometimes I'll go down like PJ Harvey rabbit holes and I'll just watch like a concert from like 1995 and then one from 98 and then one from 2002 and watch like how like her performance, you know, because like she kind of reinvents herself with it. She's sort of like a pop artist in that she kind of reinvents herself with each record to like mold her image and artwork to the themes of the record. And so
she is really good. I mean, I really like her
live performances change so much. And they're, you know, from like basically a rock band through to like, you know, she might do something as simple as perform with a group, but be isolated from the group. Like, I think like there's like a video, it's like some Royal Orchestra Hall or something. And she has like 3 live players with her and they're way away from her. And then she's isolated at a piano, like in a corner. And then it's just like a sea of black between them. And even that was like kind of a dramatic breaking point or something like that of like separating shit.
Yeah, then you have like bands that have absolutely nothing going on that just like like we're gonna mention Lungfish again, but like they don't have any, it's no frills, but they somehow still create this like environment, you know, like
I think bands that don't talk are very interesting. Like, because Lungfish do very little talking, and that was certainly like the Hoover thing was like having the preacher kind of allowed them to avoid talking as much as possible. I want to say Regulator Watts did, like Alex did, almost zero banter with anyone.
Unwound was like that too.
Yeah, Unwound were totally like that because I like the time I remember Unwound. I think I only saw them once. I don't remember them. Oh, no, I saw them twice. I really don't remember them saying a word.
Not a word.
And there's something about that does, I don't know, draw you
it charges
into it.
It charges the space, I think.
Yeah, because it almost creates tension. Because it sort of defies you to disrupt the
I do think
silence.
Unwound's stage design for what they've been doing the last few years looks really awesome. It's like ultra minimal. Like I think they have like a neon sign that they made with like a new logo. This is sort of like to the side, and then there's like a projection. I think I forget what the projection is, but
it's like the flowers, right?
I think so. But then they have flowers on the stage, like, you know, it looks nice. They're still doing shows, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're a band, like more or less.
I guess they're back together.
I mean, I don't know if they're actually gonna like write stuff.
I kind of hope they do.
I want them to. I'll be very honest.
God, I mean, talk about what a band, man, and talk about like that thing I'm always kind of talking about guitar, about like the people that are sort of the self-taught, like that have kind of something else going on that isn't a sort of traditional guitar thing. Like Justin Strasberg is definitely one of those guys too. Like I feel like I kind of learned how to play guitar by listening to Unwound.
He's he's such a like an interesting guitarist. Like he developed such an approach to how he played. That's interesting that I think that their sound like obviously changed over time, but in some ways his like playing or like signature moves, they didn't really change. Like if you compare it to like Kerosene 454, like the last record, their playing changed. They played guitar differently on that or they wrote songs with a different style of playing. Whereas like with Unwound, his playing stayed really consistent in terms of like the types of movements and the types of like guitar lines. It was more like the notes and the tonality was different, but you could tell it was the same exact dude, which I think is neat.
Yeah, I consider these kinds of players like I identify with them so much, I guess, and
I don't know if you can
is that
see
the stage? This. Oh yeah,
this
it's like
is
a
more
map.
recently.
That's what it looked like when I saw them.
What it looked like when you saw them too.
Yeah, it's got that.
I like that thing is the opposite of my complaint of like if you're gonna have a backdrop that fills the space and is actually about something, even if I don't know what it's about.
Right.
That I'm like 100%.
Yeah,
down
like
with.
projections can be pretty cool.
I hate that I'm like too conceptual and overthink everything. So if I were to be like, oh, let's project stuff, then I would have to spend 1,000 years like brainstorming what to project and editing the thought process and blah, blah, blah. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I feel like we should stop recording this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, hold on.
You're in charge.
Thanks for listening to Nail Worship.
Thanks for listening.
Hold on.